Okay guys, so in this box, as you probably already know, is the brand new 2020 Daiwa Tatula SV. And it's kind of surprising that they came out with this so early, and this definitely is not a reel that I thought would be the first 2020 model I'd be getting. But for some reason Daiwa is releasing all their new reels way early, even before they introduce them at the Japanese fishing shows, which is kind of a strange move, and it kind of makes me think that their corporate spies know what Shimano has cooking, and they kind of wanted to not compete directly head to head with release dates against Shimano. So hopefully that means Shimano's coming out with some good stuff. But here is the new 2020 Tatula. Then I got me a little, I guess it's a tungsten evergreen jackhammer chatterbait, free gift when you order from Japan Lure Shop. And here we go. Let's take a look at this box. What is all this crap? I'll clean that up later. But yeah, if you are a follower of my channel, you probably know that I'm not a huge fan of the Tatula SV. For my needs and purposes in fishing, it kind of falls short, but I like to cover reels that have either, you know, new innovation or new technology, or if they have marketplace significance. And the old Tatula SV was definitely a significant reel for Daiwa, as it was one of their best sellers. Alright, so it comes in plastic, and of course no oil, and just paperwork. The box is black instead of that, I guess, teal color of the old one. But let's take a look at this. Okay, so immediately you can tell that this has a shiny paint job, unlike the matte paint job or finish of the regular Tatula 100 and the Tatula Elite Longcast. And I like it, but I wish it was a slightly lighter color like the old model, which I'll bring out for you guys to compare with. But let you guys take a good look at this thing. Zero adjuster. And I'm gonna do my inspection, take some notes, and I'll be right back. Okay guys, so before we get into this, I just wanted to reiterate that this is a JDM model only for right now. So this is not available for sale at Tackle Warehouse or any other US vendors. If you want one, you're gonna have to import it from Japan. And I'm not sure when Daiwa plans on bringing this over. Probably more than likely at the Bassmaster Classic or at ICAST. But this is a nice looking reel, and I brought out the other two current Tatulas to compare. The first one being the Tatula 100. You can see there's a big difference in the finish. This has got kind of like a satin matte finish versus the glossy shiny look. Now they both do have that ghost spider logo, but everything else on the SV looks much higher end. As you can see, luckily they kept the chrome knob end caps, while the standard 100, of course, it's got the plain black ones. But yeah, compared to the SV, this thing looks cheap. But, you know, this is a lower priced reel as well. Keep that in mind. Now, when Daiwa does bring this new SV over, I'm not sure what the price is going to be, but in Japan, they actually have lowered the price by like 2,000 yen. So I'm not sure if that's going to translate to a price drop here when they finally release it in America. But let's look at it against the Elite, which I believe these are pretty much the exact same reel. As you can see, they pretty much the exact same paint job, except for the glossy finish, of course. They got the Daiwa Vector logo on the side plate. They both have root beer colored spools, handles. I don't know if you can tell or not, but the handle and the spool, as well as the zero adjuster, are this dark brown root beer color. And as you can see, the zero adjuster on the Elite Longcast is the exact same one on the new SV. But that shiny paint job just makes this thing look a lot more expensive than it really is. And let's hope that they don't price this thing like the Tatula Elites when they do bring it over. Okay, so now that we've established that this thing looks better than the current Tatulas, what about the old Tatula SV? Okay, so here it is side by side with the, I don't know if you want to call this the old model or the current model, but which one do you guys think looks better? Now personally, I like the shape of the new model better, but I like everything else better on the old model. And remember how I told you guys that the price dropped in Japan by like 2,000 yen of the new model? And I think I know why and where they kind of cut corners to get that price drop. The first thing is that the old SV's got that nice gold T-wing line guide, while the new one is just silver. I like the gold better. And the thumb bar, the old one, is chrome plated with this little colored section here for grip, while that's gone on the new one. And very disappointingly, the mag dial on the new one is just plain silver, while on the old one, depending on what gear ratio you have, it's colored. So this is the 7 gear ratio, so that's red, while the 8 gear ratio had purple, and I believe the 6 gear ratio had gold. And it just makes the numbers a lot easier to see. So that's another way they cut corners, I guess, to reduce the price. And also, let's take a look at the nut retainer. The nut retainer of the old one does look a lot better, more high-end than this piece of plastic. And yeah, I mean, the shape of the new one is more pleasing in my opinion, but the old one, everything else just looks better. As you can see, it's got the spool tension knob with the red accents. They could have given this new model a bit more color in my opinion than just the center nut there. But yeah, that's just my opinion. Maybe you guys think the new one looks a lot better, but I think the old one, as far as styling cues and accents and little touches, looks better than the new one. So let's go over the differences between the two. Other than the ones I just showed you, the new model picks up 1 extra ball bearing at 7+1. And I believe the gear ratios are basically the same, but except for the 7 gear ratio, I think it's dropped down to 7.1 versus 7.3 on the old model. And I picked up the 6.3. So it's going to come in 6.3, 7.1, and I believe 8.1, which, like other Daiwa reels, it's color coded. So the 6 gear ratio's got the gold. The 7 gear ratio is going to be red, so this would be red on the 7, and the 8-to-1 is going to be purple. But other than that, the new one is supposed to be a little bit smaller, which it is. As you can see, there's a big difference in height between the two. And there's a pretty significant difference in size when looking at it from the top. Oh yeah, one more thing. Thank God they gave the new model a longer handle at 85 millimeter. While the old one had this super short 80 millimeter, the new one has 85. And I'm not sure what they're gonna give it when they bring it to America. Probably a 90, but I hope they give it the new chrome end caps, or I should say the chrome end caps, instead of the ugly knobs that the American market SV had. Now, since the SV is the finesse model of the Tatula line, all the real important changes or differences between this and the other Tatulas are going to be right here. The spool and the braking system. And to get into that, of course, we're going to pull the scale out. Okay, so I got the scale out, and Daiwa Japan's website states that the new model lost about 10 grams of weight. But since we're here in America, we're going to go by ounces. Now, the old model weighs 7.17 ounces. The new model, wow, it dropped down to 6.6. So you're looking at about a half an ounce weight loss between the two, and that's pretty significant. And picking them up one after the other, yeah, I could definitely tell that the new one is lighter, and losing weight in a reel is always a good thing in my book. And I think they achieved that because this reel is just physically smaller. So this makes this thing about the same weight as the CURADO 70, which looks to be getting a replacement, hopefully this year. Okay, so now we're gonna get into what makes an SV reel an SV reel, and that's gonna be the spool. So I'm gonna pop these spools out, and we're gonna see what kind of changes Daiwa made. Okay, so I got the spools out, and do you guys see what I see? Now, as soon as I pulled the side plate off of the new SV, I was immediately disappointed because they kept the massive, super huge rotor on the new model that they had on the old model. As you can see, it sticks out just as far and it's just as thick. And just to show you guys, here's the spool of the Elite Long Cast. As you can see, it does not stick out nearly as far as this SV model. Now, I completely understand why Daiwa kept this the same size, is because they don't want this thing outcasting their more expensive models. And I guess, you know, the story is that this is supposed to be a beginner-friendly reel, but I don't know of any beginners that are going to spend $200 for their first baitcaster, so that kind of throws that theory out the window. But let's see if it lost any weight, and that's the most important part to me. It's going to be the weight. Now, they feel about the same. It's kind of disappointing, but Daiwa did make the spool smaller. This is a 33 millimeter diameter spool, and they've brought it down to a 32 millimeter diameter, same as the CURADO 70. But let's get a weight on this thing. So the old spool weighed 13.8 grams, so fairly lightweight, while the new spool, 13.1 grams, so it lost almost a whole gram. Now that's promising. I like that. So it lost some weight, probably due to the reduced size, but kept the same rotor. And I'm thinking this new model probably will be a more dynamic caster now than the old model. Now, I was not a fan of the casting on the old model because the spool, in my opinion, was way too slow. So maybe this new spool will be faster. So while we have the spools out, I'm going to go ahead and explain to everybody what SV means and what they do to a reel to make it an SV reel. So SV basically stands for stress-free versatile. And the stress-free portion means that these reels are less prone to overruns and even backlashes in some situations, while the versatile means that they say that you're supposed to be able to cast a huge range of different weighted lures without having to make any kind of changes to the brake dial. So let's say you're throwing a 3/4 ounce lure and then all of a sudden you want to tie on a 1/4 ounce lure. You should be able to just cast it without making any changes to the brakes. And with a lot of reels going from a really heavy lure down to a smaller lure, you have to make an adjustment to your braking system. Now with the SV reels, they say that supposedly you don't have to do that. So what does Daiwa do to these spools to be able to make it perform like that? Now I've come up with two things. Now the first thing is that generally SV spools are going to be lighter than average and they're going to be shallower than average most of the time. And then the second thing that makes an SV spool is what Daiwa calls the air brake. And to show you what the air brake is, I brought out the Tatula Elite spool. As you can see, there's a huge difference in the rotor size there. But this is the rotor or inductor. Now on the standard Daiwa that has MagForce Z, like this Tatula Elite, the rotor comes out during the part of the cast when the spool is spinning the fastest, and it pops out to its, I guess, maximum level or distance, and it's spring loaded. So as the spool slows down, it starts going back in, and that's standard MagForce or MagForce Z. Now in an SV spool, what they've done was they've put a little piece of plastic in there, like a little ramp, that allows this rotor to twist out. Now it pops out as well, but it twists, and it's a lot easier, I can tell you, to move this rotor. Now because of this twisting motion, as soon as you make your cast, this thing will pop out immediately, and it will get into its maximum braking sooner and stay in its maximum braking longer than, let's say, just a spring-loaded rotor of a standard MagForce Z. So that's how Daiwa achieves the SV concept. Basically, it gives you longer maximum braking throughout the cast. So SV reels tend to cast shorter, from my experience, but we're going to test that theory out because I got me a STEEZ. But because of that stronger and longer maximum braking profile of these SV spools, these things are supposed to be a lot more user-friendly, and especially the Tatula is supposed to be really, really easy to skip with this reel for beginners. And I'm going to test that as well, because when you're skipping, you need braking throughout the whole cast, especially when that lure hits the water the first time and it starts to slow down. But yeah, that's basically what the SV stands for and how they achieve that. Now before I pop these spools back in, I just want to let you know that the new spool will not work in the old reel. So here's the old spool, and since it is bigger, it's not going to fit into the smaller frame. While the new spool probably will fit, but there's too big of a gap, as you can see, and line is definitely going to slip through there. So yeah, for all you guys who are thinking of just getting the new spool to put in your old Tatula SVs, it's not going to work. So we're going to go over a couple of more things before I wrap this video up. And this is something I'm going to do with all Daiwas that I get that have the zero adjuster, is I'm going to check how much play, or if there's any play set in these reels. Now here's the new SV. And once again, Daiwa presets this zero adjuster spool tension from the factory, and I'm not gonna touch it, but I don't know if you can hear or see that, but there is about 0.5 millimeter, if that, of side-to-side movement on this new SV, which is kind of strange because I believe, yep, there's even more side-to-side movement on the 100. But on the Elite, there's hardly any. There is a slight bit of side-to-side movement, but not as significant as the other two. Now, in case you're wondering why I'm doing this, when Daiwa first came out with their SV reels, there was a video on how you're supposed to set the spool tension on these reels. Is that you're supposed to tighten it up to just minimize the side-to-side play, and then you're supposed to loosen it one click. Now, of course, that only applied, I guess that could only really be achieved in the more expensive reels from Daiwa's lineup that had the click and spool tension, because the old SV did not have that. But that's how you're supposed to set it. They want you to have a little bit of side-to-side movement on that spool to get the maximum performance, and just let the brakes do all the work. And once again, I picked me up a STEEZ SV, which I'm gonna release the video on soon, and I'm gonna show you that one as well. But yeah, it seems like each reel has different varying degrees of side-to-side movement. Now, the last thing I'm going to go over is going to be really the only thing that I found disappointing, other than that massive rotor that they kept, is the thumb bar. Alright, so let me see if you guys can see this. There is movement or play there. Still feels good, and luckily when it's pressed it doesn't move, which is good. But yeah, that's kind of disappointing. It's not as bad as the other two Tatulas though, and it's not as bad as the old one, the old SV that I got. But I think that's just, you know, par for the course when you're having to engage that T-wing clutch mechanism. You're not going to have that crisp, solid thumb bar engagement of, let's say, a Shimano. But yeah, that's the new Tatula SV. Good looking reel. Kind of went backwards in some respects as far as looks go, in my opinion, but everything else was better. I'm going to take this thing out on the water and I'm going to compare it to the old model, and we're actually going to see if the SV spool performs just as advertised. So be out on the lookout for that. Alright guys, thanks a lot.